You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, big game coming up on Sunday. Packers, Lions, first place in the NFC North at stake. But first, before we get into any of that, how about a word from our sponsor?
Gil, first of all, I barely recognize you without the music playing over you. But hey, that's okay. Technical difficulties, that's what happens when you're in this medium quite a bit. But a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. Ticket King has been for over 30 years providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. Big game, obviously, at Lambeau this weekend. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee to get tickets for this upcoming weekend home game. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. You can see both those links on your screen if you're following with us on YouTube today. Thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button while you're at it, and feel free to join the conversation. Add some commentary. We want to hear your input as well. We'll have some predictions later in the show, and we'd like to hear your predictions for Sunday. Which, Gil, you talk about a massive game coming up this weekend. Wow.
Yeah, this is big. 6-1 against 6-2 doesn't get too much more close to perfect than that, and I cannot wait for this big game. And you know, the rivalry with the Lions is really heating up the last few years, and it's great to see.
Yeah, and the thing is, you just wish both these teams were fully healthy because both these teams are really good when fully healthy. And speaking of health, Jordan Love dealing with some more injury issues. Luckily, nothing new with no injury to that left knee again that he injured in Brazil. It was a groin injury that he left with on Sunday in the win against Jacksonville. Played 3 total plays in the second half before hobbling off towards the sideline and going down, and then being replaced by Malik Willis, who, man, talk about the hero again, 4 for 5 on the day, 56 yards, including a 51-yard completion to Jaden Reed to help set up the game-winning field goal. But now the big question is, the Packers' bye week is right around the corner. Malik Willis has shown that he can win you football games. Jordan Love is a tough guy. He wants to play. I still believe Jordan Love gives you your best chance to win. It's a huge divisional game, but you got the bye week around the corner. Gil, should Jordan Love play on Sunday?
I go back and forth, to be honest with you. And Here's why. I think your odds are better if both players are healthy with Jordan Love. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. He gives you a whole different dimension in the passing game than what Malik Willis can give. The reason I hesitate is, I'm thinking about long-term. You don't want anything more serious to happen to Jordan Love that jeopardizes him going forward. And then B, I think it might be more difficult for the Lions to prepare for Malik Willis. They're less familiar with him. The Packers and Matt LaFleur can scheme up something different with Malik Willis there. So I think if Jordan Love is able to go, you want him to go. But I hesitate a little bit because, I think the question may end up being, is 75% of Jordan Love better than Malik Willis at 100%?
And that's the big question. That's the big debate going on. I will say this first and foremost. I trust the Packers medical staff. I trust that if they give Jordan Love the go-ahead, that he's going to be good enough to play. If they say no, then he's not good enough to play. And honestly, whatever the medical staff says, I'm on board with. Malik Willis has shown that he can win you football games. Jordan Love, obviously, is a terrific quarterback and one of the terrific young quarterbacks in this league right now, and it only seems to be getting better. Whatever the Packers medical staff determines for Sunday is in the best interest of the Green Bay Packers. That's what the decision they are going to make. And the thing that scares me the most, though, with this Jordan Love injury is that it's soft tissue. And soft tissue injuries, I've had my fair share of them. Not at NFL level, obviously, but just myself in general. where you come back too soon from a soft tissue injury, you got to start all over again. And you got to start the cycle all over again. You start from square one to get back at it. Now, encouraging news was Jordan Love didn't practice on Wednesday, but he was limited on Thursday. And I don't know if you saw the weather forecast that was going on in Green Bay today. Rainy, windy. It was disgusting. It's super windy outside my window right now, about 2 hours south of Green Bay. But it's just something where the soft tissue injury you got to be a little more careful with. And I go back and forth too. But Gil, what's the minimum percentage that you'd be like, okay, if Jordan Love is this percent healthy, I'm willing to play him? For me, it's probably 80%. I think that's the threshold for me.
I would be in the same ballpark, 75, 80%. And just FYI, for what it's worth, the weather forecast as of now for Sunday in Green Bay is a 55% chance of showers and temperatures in the mid-50s. And remember, this is a 3:25 Central Time start. So as the game goes on, it may get cooler and cooler. And this will be on Central Standard Time by the time this game actually kicks off.
Yeah, and with Love too, I just hope whoever is playing quarterback on Sunday, the focal point is running the football. And you got to see, if you're the Packer coaches and medical staff, can Jordan Love deliver a handoff from under center to the back? Can he make those steps? Can he run play action? Can he go outside the pocket? Essentially, all these movements that I think are going to be so necessary, because I do think no matter what Love's status is for Sunday, I do think the Packers are going to make it a point to be able to try to run the football against the Detroit Lions. But some other injury news and notes this week so far. A few DNPs in practice that is a little concerning. Quarterback Jaire Alexander dealing with a knee, which he looked to have hurt. It was a non-contact injury in that final offensive play of the game for the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. Center Josh Myers, who's questionable to play on Sunday, ended up playing with that wrist injury. He hasn't practiced all week. And then safety Evan Williams, he supposedly had some hamstring issues early in the game or pregame. That's what Matt LaFleur was saying, that he felt something in pregame and then he had to leave the game later, and it made a huge ripple effect on that defense and made life a lot more difficult for that defense. But good news, though, Quay Walker, who missed Sunday's game because he was still in the concussion protocol, he returned to practice. He's back at practice this week, and he's ready to start.
Yeah, and, unfortunately, these injuries, almost like position by position, these are not the players you want injured when you're facing a tough team like the Detroit Lions. And, oh, boy, you saw the difference. Evan Williams, not a household name yet. You saw the big difference that his absence had on that Green Bay defense in the second half, because the Jaguars just went up and down the field on the Packers when Javon Bullard had to move to safety and Keyshawn Nixon had to move and Eric Stokes came back into the game. You really want to have a healthy Jaire Alexander and a healthy Evan Williams for Sunday. This is just not good timing.
Yeah, it's not, but hey, if anything, if they are held out on Sunday, especially, I think Josh Myers is going to play. I think he played with the wrist injury last week, and I think he's going to do it again. I think they're just giving him time to heal up and just get as good as possible before Sunday's game, but who knows? I could be very wrong as well. But Jaire and Evan Williams, though, if they don't play on Sunday, it's 1 of 17, and they're going to have essentially 3 weeks between the previous game in Jacksonville and their next game after the bye week. So you got a lot of time to get that healed up. Fortunately, it sounds like it was good injury news, though, for Evan Williams and Jaire Alexander, where it doesn't seem to be anything long-term, anything that would essentially lead to them winding up on the injured reserve list. So that's a good thing. It just could be really bad timing for the game that they missed. Some other injury news and notes. Corey Ballantyne, who did not practice or did not play on Sunday against Jacksonville, he returned to practice this week. He's dealing with an ankle. Josh Jacobs, he's dealing with an ankle. Elton Jenkins dealing with a glute. Rasheed Walker dealing with a knee. They all returned to practice Thursday after they missed practice on Wednesday. So a lot of eyes on that Packers injury report going into such a massive game this weekend. And also after this weekend, Gil, we have the NFL trade deadline, which the Packers typically, they don't really participate in. All I think about usually is Mike McCarthy when I believe it was Bill Huber brought up one time in a press conference where, hey, any moves for the trade deadline you anticipate? And he said, "Oh, is that next week?" And Bill Huber said, "No, it's tomorrow." And he's like, "Oh, that's how the trade deadline is here," where it was practically non-existent. But Gil, I don't think the Packers. You can put your money on the Packers not making a deadline deal before Tuesday, the Tuesday NFL trade deadline. But if you want to target anyone, who should the Packers target at the NFL trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean, this is not so cut and dried, but I mean, if I had to go with one guy, I would go with defensive end Trey Hendrickson. I think that
what?
Man,
I would love that. I would love that.
I mean, the question is, what would it cost? He's asked for a trade. The Bengals are struggling. He would fit in really well with the Packers. They need some extra juice because the front four has not been getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. My only concern is, I'm not ready to give up a first-round pick in this year's draft to get him.
And you got to think the comparable for someone the caliber of Trey Hendrickson would be that Devontae Adams trade from the Raiders to the Jets, where the Jets, and they're kind of a team making it very desperate. It's a general manager who's trying to save his job and saying, just screw the picks. I'm trying to save my job. Where they traded a conditional third rounder, which could be improved to a second round pick, and they're paying the rest of Devontae Adams' contract. Now, Trey Hendrickson, he's got one more year left on his deal after this year, but he requested a trade from the Bengals earlier this offseason. He wants a new contract after he had a career-high 17.5 sacks last year in Cincy. He's one of the better pass rushers in football. That's why that would be such an awesome boost to the Green Bay Packers. And there's a lot of talk about Preston Smith or Andre Dillard being on the move from Green Bay. I don't anticipate those guys getting moved unless they do acquire someone like a Trey Hendrickson. But Trey Hendrickson, though, he's part of a Bengals team. They're having a bunch of issues right now. They're 3-5, but they're only a game and a half out of the final playoff spot. And that's a team that's very good. They're only a few years removed from playing in the Super Bowl, and they've played in AFC championship games, and Trey Hendrickson's been part of that core. So I don't know if they're ready to cut loose yet. If they lose this weekend to the Raiders, could totally change some things come deadline time. But you're talking about Hendrickson, though. 7 sacks this year, tied for 5th best in the NFL as well. That would be a dream target, Gil. That really would. But you got to take into consideration what's the capital that you're willing to give up, and then how much, and are you willing to pay a guy like Trey Hendrickson an extension, the money that he's going to be commanding. It's probably going to be north of $30 million a year, and you're paying Rashawn Gary a lot of money already. I don't know how much the Packers could squeeze out of the budget, especially given that you guys like Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom, who are going to be due some big paydays coming up after this year as well.
Yeah, I didn't say it would be easy, but the question was who was my ideal target? Well, there it is. That would be ideal. I don't know how workable it's going to be. And quite honestly, if anything, I think Brian Gutekunst will stand pat, but we'll see.
That's what he tends to do. But if I were someone who I'd want to target, I'm looking for the Packers. I still have faith in the defensive line. I still have faith that they're going to get it together and that they're going to find a groove and they're going to really, really dominate in Jeff Hafley's new scheme. The secondary injuries are kind of concerning to me, and corner outside of anyone named Jaire Alexander is kind of concerned to me. I wouldn't mind if they targeted Patriots corner Jonathan Jones. And the Patriots, they have been public saying, hey, we're open for business. It's a team that's in clear rebuild mode. They're trying to stash a bunch of picks. You know who's in charge there is Elliott Wolf. It's Ron Wolf's son. Mm-hmm. And Elliott Wolf has a relationship with the Packers front office, with many members of that Packers front office, and obviously with Brian Gutekunst, where Elliott Wolf was up for that GM job a few years ago until Brian Gutekunst ended up getting the job. Now, Jonathan Jones, he's a bit of a smaller corner. He's 5'9", under 190, but he's got plenty of experience. He has 28 total tackles this year, a forced fumble, 3 passes defended, 11 interceptions in his career. I think he would be an upgrade over Eric Stokes and Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine, anyone not named Jaire Alexander. And he's a guy who has an expiring contract as well. If the Patriots are just looking to get a pick and just get ahead of the compensatory pick curve, that's the way to possibly do it. Kind of like what the Packers did years ago when they traded away Clinton Dix and they got a 4th-round pick right away. I don't think he would command a 4th-round pick, but a 5th-round pick, I would entertain a deal for a guy like Jonathan Jones and the Patriots.
I would totally see that being a helpful addition to the team. Again, I tend to think Goody is not going to do any of that.
No,
but
probably not.
I think both of those players would be solid additions to this team as far as where they stand right now.
And I would say, too, if Brian Gutekunst makes a deal, it seems like if he makes a deal for someone, the most he's willing to give up is a 4th-round pick. That's the most. But if he's giving up someone, he's giving up someone for a day 2 or better pick. So that's just, and that's good. He's drafted very well. I would operate probably the same way as well. But hey, we'll see. Next week is the bye week. If the Packers do acquire someone or trade someone away, well, plenty to talk about even during a bye week, Gil. But before the bye week, obviously, the Packers hosting the Lions. The Lions are 6-1. The Packers are 6-2. The Lions have won 5 in a row. The Packers have won 4 in a row. Just a heavyweight battle. So let's talk about these teams. The Packer offense and the Lions defense specifically. Green Bay, total offense, 5th overall in the NFL right now. Detroit's defense, total defense is 20th overall. Green Bay's offense averaging 27 points a game. That's 6th in the league. Their passing attack is 9th in the league. Rushing attack is 5th in the league. Detroit defensively, the passing defense, even though they generate a lot of turnovers in the air with a lot of interceptions, they're allowing just over 245.5 passing yards per game. That's 27th in football. Then again, though, they're playing a lot of teams who they're just crushing early on, and they're just allowing a lot of garbage yards. The defensive, the rushing attack, the rush defense, allowing just under 102 yards per game. That's 5th in the NFL. Points-wise, though, only 19 points per game allowed by the Lions defense so far this year. That's 8th in the NFL. Gil, this should be a good matchup. Detroit's defense is a defense that makes you play really sloppy on offense and likes to generate the big play and the big turnovers. What's the matchup we should be looking forward to?
There are a bunch of them.
Yes, there are.
There are a lot of things to look at, but first of all, they've got to establish the run. And it is a weakness. It is a strength of the Detroit defense. Their run defense is better now. Keep in mind, part of that is because they are winning. They're ahead in most of their games. So teams have to pass. So you take a little grain of salt, both in the pass defense and run defense statistics. But the Packers are going to have to find a way to keep Josh Jacobs running the football effectively and do not, under any circumstances, go away from the running game. It is something that they do when they tend to not win games. Part of it is because Matt LaFleur goes away from the running game. The Detroit run defense is not giving up a lot of yards per game, but defensively, opponents are averaging 4.7 yards per rush. So they can be run on, even though teams aren't doing it frequently because they're usually behind.
And that 4.7 opposing rushing yards per carry, that's bottom 10 in the NFL. And this is a Detroit defense also decimated by injury, specifically in that defensive front 7 right now. They have a lot of good players. Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, DJ Reader, who is a free agent acquisition this offseason, Ali McNeil. Those are some nice players, but they're missing a lot of guys. And we'll get to all the injuries that they have coming up later in this episode. But yeah, I'm with you, Gil. The Packers offense, hey, they even when Jordan Love left the game against a good Jacksonville rushing defense, Josh Jacobs and the rushing offense played better. And they really put the pedal to the metal. It's an offense that's averaging 4.9 yards per carry. That's 8th in the NFL. Jacobs is a top 5 running back right now in football, 667 rushing yards on the year. He had a couple touchdowns. He's finally getting in a groove. And I feel like the Packers, I'm with you. That's a matchup to watch because the Packers have to stick with the run. I don't care who's playing quarterback. If it's Malik Willis or if it's Jordan Love, even if it's Sean Clifford somehow, stick with the run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, we saw Jacobs, what he's capable of doing, some of the tackles he broke, some of the moves he made where it looked like there was just no room at all and he just kept going. And that touchdown run was a thing of beauty. The 38 yard.
38 yards, he got it.
That was a thing of beauty. So, that's going to be very, very important for the Packers and just keep running the ball. And that also has another benefit. It keeps the Lions offense off the field.
And the Lions offense is obviously so crazy. We'll get to them in just a sec. I just want to go over my matchup real quick. And we're looking at the rushing attack. Josh Jacobs should have a lot of volume on Sunday. He has to have a lot of volume on Sunday for the Packers to have a chance. But when they throw the ball, whether it's Jordan Love or Malik Willis, you got to keep an eye out for safeties Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. These guys are just dominating so far when it comes to interceptions. Kirby Joseph has 5 picks this year. That's second in the NFL behind Green Bay's Xavier McKinney. Brian Branch, well, he has 4 interceptions. That's tied for third in the NFL. The Lions have 10 interceptions as a team. So do the math. Those two have 9 of the 10 interceptions for the Lions this year. Now, Kirby Joseph, he's a known Packer killer, man. He's only in his 3rd season. He's played 3 games against the Packers in his career, and he has 3 career interceptions. Even picked off Aaron Rodgers on his final passing attempt as Green Bay Packer a few years ago to wrap up the 2022 season. Jordan Love, though, you're talking about a guy who obviously big arm. He takes a lot of chances with his arm, and he leads the NFL right now with 9 interceptions on the year. It's been a struggle. But with the Packers, though, you gotta be creative. You gotta make sure that these guys, you know where these guys are at all times on the field, because they can ruin your offense in a heartbeat.
And it will be important that the Packers do not abandon the middle of the field when it comes to throwing the football. Jaden Reed out of the slot is a big weapon for this team. Tucker Kraft, a big weapon for this team. You cannot pull an Aaron Rodgers and only throw outside the hash marks.
Yeah, you got a beast in Tucker Kraft who had a big day on National Tight Ends Day, because of course he did, and a guy in Jaden Reed who made the critical play at the end of the game to set up for the chip shot game-winning field goal in Jacksonville, which is a huge critical win. But you got to be smart. Just let the defense just adjust to the defense. Let it come to you. Run the ball. Do play action, and it should be a good day for the Packers offense. Now, let's go to the Detroit offense and the Packer defense. Detroit's offense, oh, Nelly, they are good. 6th overall in total offense this year. Green Bay's total defense, 15th in the league. Detroit's offense, man, they've been a juggernaut, Gil. They're 11th in passing yards per game, 6th in rushing yards per game, and they are the number 1 scoring team in football this year, averaging 33.4 points per game. They're coming off a game that they scored 52 points in a win against the Titans. A lot of those points came off of short fields and special teams. Kind of a weird game. Jared Goff only had 85 passing yards, which is pretty unique. Not many times you're going to win an NFL game when your quarterback only throws 85 yards, nevertheless by 38 points. Green Bay's defense, they're allowing just over 21 points a game. That's tied for 11th in the league. They are the 19th ranked passing attack on defense, and then rushing, 111.6 rush yards per game allowed. That's 10th in the NFL. And Gil, this defense is going to have their hands full. Jeff Hafley better have a good game plan coming. What's the matchup we should be looking forward to watch between the Green Bay defense and the Lions offense?
I'm going to start with the run. I think the Packers have to stop the run. Detroit has 2 quality running backs, and it will not be easy for the Green Bay Packers to stop them. And not only are they 2 really good running backs, they have contrasting styles, and both of them have had some pretty darn big games against the Packers. Jahmyr Gibbs is fast. He has a 70-yard touchdown run. David Montgomery is tough and more of an inside runner. They've split carries almost exactly evenly, 93 carries for Montgomery, 92 for Gibbs. Both of them with healthy averages, 7 touchdowns for Montgomery, 6 for Gibbs. Green Bay's run defense has been so inconsistent this year. They need to step up and get the job done, because if the Lions are ahead of the sticks, if they're coming up 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3, this offense can kill you.
And their rushing attack, these guys are just a 2-headed monster in that backfield, where you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's top 10 in rushing, 591 yards this year, 6.4 yards per carry. That's 2nd amongst running backs with at least 50 carries this season, behind only Baltimore's Derrick Henry. He also has 6 touchdowns on the ground. That's tied for 6th in football, and a receiving touchdown. While David Montgomery, he has 415 rushing yards this year at 7 touchdowns. That's tied for 3rd overall in the NFL. These guys have been so good. Now, the Packers' rushing defense has been significantly better since the Joe Barry days. I'll give them that for sure. They're allowing their opposing runners to rush for 4.3 yards per carry. That's actually top 10 right now in the NFL. Detroit's ball carriers, though, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. That's tied for 4th best in the league. And you got to make it a point to stop the run. You got to make it a point on offense to run the ball for Green Bay, and you got to make a point on defense to stop the run, because Detroit's kind of limited when it comes to receivers on the outside. Jared Goff obviously has been very good, but this is the focal point, Gil. You got to stop these two because they could take over a game like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Detroit can run the football, Green Bay is going to be in trouble in this game for sure. It just changes the whole complexion. It makes Jared Goff's life so much easier.
Yeah, and Jared Goff is the matchup I'm looking forward to, seeing what Jeff Hafley cooks up, and the Packers pass rush too, where Detroit's offensive line is very good. They have some very good players in Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow, former Wisconsin Badger and Wisconsin native Kevin Zeitler on that offensive line as well. Once was the NFL's highest paid offensive guard at one point. Detroit's offensive line, though, has allowed 18 sacks this year. That's tied for 16th in the NFL. It's not great. It's not terrible, but they've shown that they can be vulnerable there. While Green Bay's passing defense, they're allowing opposing quarterbacks a rating of 84.5. That's 13th best in the league. And opposing quarterbacks are completing 63.5% of their passes. That's top 10 in the league as well. They're getting to the quarterback 20. They've gotten to the quarterback 21 times this year. That's tied for 8th most in the NFL. And then, of course, the Packers have 10 interceptions. That's tied for second place in the NFL currently right now. But you talk about Jared Goff, though, a guy who's just been so sharp and precise. His completion percentage is 74.1% this year, which is first in the NFL. It's bonkers. He's averaging 9 yards per passing attempt. That's second to Russell Wilson, who only has 2 starts under his belt, but he does have a significant amount of passing attempts already. 13 touchdown passes and a 115.3 quarterback rating, second only to reigning MVP Lamar Jackson. So it's just the Packers are going to have their hands full. Jeff Hafley and the defense showed that they could do it when they did against C.J. Stroud a few weeks ago at Lambeau Field. I'm interested to see what they cook up against Jared Goff.
Yeah, and again, having the defense healthy is going to be important. You get the feeling that Jeff Hafley is going to have to cook up some of those exotic blitzes, whether it's Edgerrin Cooper, whether it's Keyshawn Nixon coming out of the slot. They're going to have to cook up something. And who knows, maybe if Quay Walker is healthy, he gets involved in some of the blitz packages as well. But this Green Bay defense cannot allow Jared Goff to have time to throw because he has got, even without Jameson Williams, who was unavailable serving the second game of his suspension, still got Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. There are some weapons on this Detroit offense.
And especially given that the Packers, there's a chance they may not have Jaire Alexander or Evan Williams. That messes a lot with your secondary for sure. And the Lions are a team that they don't really give away the football. So you got to attack and you got to force the issue, which Jeff Hafley has shown over and over that this Packers team will do that. They already have more takeaways this year than they did all of last year under Joe Barry. It's a huge difference in defensive mindset. And I'm really excited to see what kind of plan he cooks up. Now let's get over some key stats real quick. Turnover ratio this year, Packers +7 in turnover ratio. That's 4th best in the league. And the Lions, well, they're +10, tied for 2nd best in the NFL. Penalty-wise, Green Bay, 57 offensive penalties this year. That's 6th most in the NFL. But they had a season-low 3 penalties in the win in Jacksonville. So definite progress there. Obviously, a sign that things are getting cleaned up a little bit. The defense for Green Bay, 50 penalties this year. That's right in the middle of the pack. Detroit's offense, 50 penalties this year, tied for 14th most in football. The defense, 42 penalties. That's 6th fewest. I would have to say, though, the Detroit offense, a lot of those penalties, I think, are just from illegal formations and motions or whatever it may be when they're trying to do a bunch of stuff against Dallas earlier this year to try to get Dan Skipper a touchdown and just mess around with the Dallas defense. And then third down, the money down. Green Bay's offense converting 39% of their third downs on offense, 15th in football. They're allowing opponents to only convert 33% of the time on defense, tied for 9th best in the NFL. While Detroit's offense, well, they've been very good on third down, offense and defense. Offensively, 42.9%, 7th best in the league. And defensively, 30.7% best in the NFL. Just an absolute juggernaut for a reason. And the best teams, they succeed on third down. Detroit's definitely a top 5 team right now, maybe top 3, maybe even top 2. Who knows? Maybe even the top 1 in the NFL currently.
They have been outstanding. And look, they've only lost 1 game all year. This is going to be a really, really big game for the Packers, a measuring stick. If they win it, they're in a whole different position for the second half of the season than if they lose it.
And real quick, some Lions injury news and notes. Not practicing so far this week includes Lions defensive end Joshua Pascal dealing with an illness, and linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez. If you watched HBO's Hard Knocks, you would have known him as Roro. He's dealing with an ankle issue. Returning to practice on Thursday after they did not practice on Wednesday includes offensive tackle Taylor Decker, guard Graham Glasgow, quarterback Jared Goff, defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike, center Frank Ragnow, defensive lineman DJ Reader, and offensive guard Kevin Zeitler. And in case you missed the news a few weeks ago, on the IR right now, defensive end Aiden Hutchinson, who has 7.5 of the Lions' 20 sacks this year, had that brutal, gruesome leg injury a few weeks ago in the win at Dallas. He's out for the year. He's on IR, as well as linebacker Derek Barnes, defensive lineman Marcus Davenport, a former first-round pick, and quarterback Emmanuel Mosley. And then, Gil, you also touched on it too. Suspended right now is wide receiver Jameson Williams, their first-round pick a couple of years ago. And obviously, with that, that's definitely helpful for the Packers with all those injuries where they can run the ball in offense, given all the losses they have on the Detroit defense. And offensive and defensively, make a point to stop the Lions running game, because passing wise, they're kind of limited on the outside.
They're limited, but they're still dangerous. And I'll say this, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best slot receivers in the NFL right now.
Oh, yeah.
So, you cannot take this team lightly just because Williams is out of the lineup. And
also, you got to also consider they have the best offensive coordinator in football, who should have been a head coach last year.
Yes.
Why can't he just leave? Just leave the division, please. Ben Johnson needs to go. I'm petitioning Ben Johnson to go. Hopefully he's gone after this year. Hopefully we only get 2 more games, maybe even 3 more games, including the playoffs, of Ben Johnson as the Lions' own coordinator. Gil, why did the Packers win on Sunday?
One of the factors that I think, first of all, the Packers win if they stop the run. And then I think, you talked about both teams being so high on the turnover list plus turnover differentials. The Packers have to win the turnover battle in this game. If they do that and they stop the run fairly consistently, I think they will win.
I think they got to win third down and they got to run the football. Keep that Lions offense off the field. Your offense stays on the field and you dictate the terms of the game on the offensive side of the football in front of the home crowd. That's why the Packers win. Keep that Lions offense far away from the field. Stay on the field on offense. Green Bay, why do they lose?
They lose if they can't run the football, first of all. And if they're coming up 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12 consistently, that's going to be a big problem. And I think, just to take that a step further, the team that does better on 3rd down is going to win this game. So if the Packers don't come through on 3rd down, they could be in trouble.
Green Bay needs to play a 4-quarter game. They need to play good football for a full 4 quarters to have a chance against this team. The Lions are playing outstanding football, and it seems like they've kind of hit their stride right now, which maybe they've peaked and maybe they're just going to regress a little bit, but this is a machine. They were a machine last year, and it seems like there's no stopping this engine. There's no stopping this.
I would not hold my breath that they're going to all of a sudden be bad.
I agree.
This team is good. It's just a question of how good, how much better they can get.
And my point being, if the Packers lose, it's because they don't play a 4-quarter game and they let up. Look what happened. They were down 10-0 at Minnesota, a very good team as well. And then they rattled off 3 straight touchdowns in a matter of minutes. It's just, they could just kill you. They could kill you with 1,000 cuts, or they could also just hammer you immediately. There's just so much. There's a million ways to skin a cat, and there's a million ways to win a football game. And the Lions seem to do a lot of that pretty damn well. With this game, Gil, what's your prediction for Sunday?
The injuries, just to me, play a part in this. And the Packers' injuries, whether it's Jaire Alexander, Evan Williams, Jordan Love, even if those guys play, I don't think they're going to be at 100%. And I think these are critical players, especially when you look at the matchups between these two teams. So I think Detroit ends up finding a way to win a very close game. Detroit 34, Green Bay 30.
So we're thinking the same thing where I think Detroit's going to win as well. I think it's going to be 24-20 Lions over Packers. So we're off just by a couple digits right there, Gil. We're off by 20 points still. A little bit wider margin than what we're used to here on this podcast. But with this, I think it's going to be a little more of a grinder than anticipated. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think this is going to be a game that's going to come down to the 4th quarter. It's going to be who it's going to be just a big slugfest. And I think the Lions are just going to come out on top, just given the Packers injuries. I think the Lions have been able to adjust without Aiden Hutchinson, without Derek Barnes, without Jameson Williams, without Marcus Davenport. They've been able to adjust. How will the Packers do without Evan Williams potentially and Jaire Alexander? And they've shown Malik Willis that they can run a good offense and they can succeed very well on the offensive side of the football. Just the defense, that's a little bit of a concern. And I just think the Lions are just playing such good football right now. And that's why I think the Lions will edge Green Bay and Green Bay will fall to 6-3.
I hope not, but I think that's what's going to happen.
I hope we're both wrong for the sake of the Green Bay Packers, Gil. I hope they prove us wrong all the time, especially when we pick them to lose. Obviously, big division game this weekend, Gil. A lot of good content on Cheesehead TV, Packers Post. What do you got cooking this week?
On the Packers Post, I did talk about the impact of Evan Williams and Malik Willis as far as what they've been able to do this year. Also talked about how Romeo Doubs has played very well since coming back from his one-game suspension. And I looked at Edgerrin Cooper and his impact after being named NFC Defensive Player of the Week last week over at Cheesehead TV.
And a lot of good stuff there. Romeo Doubs seems like a new focus, a new mindset and everything. But hey, speaking of Edgerrin Cooper, you ready for some trivia?
Ready for some trivia.
All right, sounds good. Well, this past week, two Packer 2024 season newcomers registered a couple awards. You mentioned Edgerrin Cowboy Cooper. He was named the NFC Defensive Player of the Week after he registered 9 total tackles, a key strip sack deep in Jacksonville territory, and defending a critical third down pass in Sunday's win against the Jags. And despite a 2-week lull without registering an interception, safety Xavier McKinney was named the NFC Defensive Player of the Month after registering 19 total tackles, 1 sack, recovering 1 fumble, and intercepting 2 passes in October. Now, before this, Gil, who were the last Packers to win NFC Defensive Player of the Week and NFC Defensive Player of the Month? And anyone watching with us on YouTube and Facebook, feel free to chime in with who you think the answer is as well. But don't give Gil any hints, unless Gil asks for it.
Okay. I'm going to go with Charles Woodson.
I will say it's within the last 5 years.
Last 5 years.
Yep.
Rashawn Gary and Zadarius Smith.
So are you saying Player of the Week for Rashawn Gary?
Smith for Player of the Week.
And Rashawn Gary for Player of the Month.
Right.
Both, unfortunately, incorrect, Gil. In 2021, it was cornerback Rasul Douglas, who was the NFC Defensive Player of the Week in Week 12 of the 2021 season. And then linebacker Devondre Campbell, who was October's Defensive Player of the Month in the NFC as well. Douglas joined the Packers in the early part of the 21 season after the Packers signed him to their 53-man roster off of Arizona's practice squad and was named Defensive Player of the Week in the NFC after his 7th game with Green Bay, where he defended 4 passes and he registered a pick 6 and a win over the eventual Super Bowl champion Rams at Lambeau Field in Week 12. I was there for that game. I had a perfect view of it. He read it like a book. It was beautiful. Rasul Douglas, I miss him so much. And then Devondre Campbell, he joined the Packers in 21 as well after he was a street free agent signing by the Packers. Campbell was named NFC Defensive Player of the Month for October as well. He registered 45 total tackles, forced 2 fumbles, intercepted a pass in 5 games in October 21. And Campbell later went on to be named to the NFL's All-Pro team in 2021. Now, obviously, for those who follow the Packers, you know the Packers traded Douglas to Buffalo at last year's trade deadline for a 3rd-round pick. Campbell was released by the team and is now with the San Francisco 49ers after last year. So a couple guys who had some huge years and huge moments in that first year for the Green Bay Packers. And I specifically miss Rasul Douglas. Devondre Campbell, it was time to move on.
It was time to move on. I did not like the Rasul Douglas trade at the time, and I still am not thrilled with it, to be honest with you. But
we got to give it a few years, too. I'm not a fan of it either. He was awesome. He was a gamer.
He was. All right, well, that is it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packers Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go, Pack, go. Let's get a win, boys.